I still remember the way the airport lights flickered above me that night, cold, sterile, unfeeling. They made everything look too sharp, too exposed, like even the walls could see how pathetic I looked sitting alone with my backpack clutched against my chest. I was 15. And that was the night I realized my mother didn't love me the way mothers were supposed to. My name is Claire, and this is the story of how the woman who gave me life also gave me my first lesson in abandonment. It happened the summer my mom remarried. I still remember how she looked at him, Daniel, her new husband. He was everything she thought she'd always wanted, rich, charming, the kind of man who wore expensive cologne that smelled like confidence and control. I was supposed to call him stepdad, but every time I tried the word stuck in my throat. Mom met Daniel less than a year after she divorced my father. The divorce had gutted her, or so she said. But to me it looked more like she'd been waiting for an excuse to reinvent herself. She traded her old jeans and messy buns for silk blouses, manicures, and spa weekends. I didn't recognize her anymore. The woman who once stayed up sewing my Halloween costumes and cooking pancakes on Sunday mornings was suddenly replaced by someone who cared more about selfies than breakfast. When she told me Daniel was taking her on a 2-week luxury vacation to Greece, I expected her to sound excited. But I didn't expect the next words that came out of her mouth. "You won't be coming with us," she said casually over dinner, twirling pasta around her fork. "It's an adults-only trip." I stared at her. "But it's summer break, where am I supposed to go?" She didn't even look up. "Your father's too busy, isn't he? Maybe you can stay with your aunt or a friend." My father and I barely spoke anymore. The divorce had burned every bridge between us, and he'd moved 3 states away. My aunt had her own kids. My friends were all out of town. When I told her that, she sighed. "Then we'll figure something out. Don't make this difficult, Claire. I deserve to have fun too." That sentence stuck in my mind like a thorn. I deserve to have fun too. It wasn't that she said it. It was the way she said it, like my existence was a burden she had to set down for a while. 2 weeks later, she figured something out. She told me Daniel had booked their flight early, a 10 p.m. departure, and that she'd drop me off at the airport around 7 p.m. because her friend would be picking me up from there to spend a week at her house. She said her friend's daughter Lily was around my age. I didn't question it. I wanted to believe her. I remember the car ride vividly. She was humming along to the radio, her nails freshly painted, the scent of her perfume filling the car. She looked so happy, so alive. I wanted to say something to tell her how scared I was of being alone, but every time I opened my mouth, I imagined her rolling her eyes. When we reached the airport, she parked the car, helped me grab my suitcase, and said, "Lily's mom should be here soon. Just wait inside, okay? Don't wander off." "Don't?" I nodded. She kissed my cheek, quick, distracted, then hurried back to the car. Her heels clicked against the pavement like gunshots fading into the night. I stood there watching her drive away, headlights shrinking into the distance. That was the last time I saw her for a very long time. At first, I wasn't scared. I sat down on one of the benches inside the terminal, scrolling through my phone, waiting for a text or call. I told myself maybe traffic was bad, maybe Lily's mom was late. But an hour passed, then 2, then 4. My phone battery dropped to 10%. I started calling my mom, no answer. Then Daniel voicemail. Over and over. The same dull ring, the same automated voice saying, "Please leave your message after the tone." At some point, the janitor started mopping the floor near me. He looked at me strangely, probably wondering why a teenage girl was still sitting there at midnight with no parents in sight. That's when I started to panic. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that maybe they'd come back. But deep down, I knew. I'd seen the way Daniel looked at me when Mom wasn't around, like I was something inconvenient, something he had to tolerate. He had won, and I was the collateral. By 1 a.m., the airport was nearly empty. The loudspeaker echoed flight cancellations and late arrivals. My chest felt tight, my throat dry. I wanted to cry, but I was too embarrassed. Everyone walking by looked at me like I didn't belong there, a child out of place in a world built for adults. So I sat. I waited. And somewhere around 2 a.m. I stopped waiting, because that's when I saw a photo on social media. My mom had posted a picture of herself and Daniel on the plane, champagne glasses raised, captioned, "Off to paradise with my love. No worries, no responsibilities, just us." No responsibilities. I don't remember the exact moment the tears started falling, but I remember how they burned hot, humiliating, unstoppable. I wasn't just crying because I was abandoned. I was crying because she made it look easy. Eventually, a security officer approached me. "Miss, are you waiting for someone?" he asked kindly. I nodded, unable to speak. He asked for my mom's number, but she didn't answer his call either. He tried Daniel's 2-0. Finally, he called child services. When they arrived, I was numb. I remember their soft voices, the way they offered me water, the way one of them said, "You're safe now." But I didn't feel safe. I felt hollow. They took me to a foster care center for the night. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the sound of other kids breathing in the dark, wondering how many of them had stories like mine. The next morning, I turned on my phone again, 20% battery left. Still no messages from her, no apology, no explanation, just silence. That silence lasted 3 months. During those months, I lived in 3 different foster homes, each one temporary, each one colder than the last. I went to school, smiled when teachers asked how I was doing, told everyone I was fine. But every night, I'd scroll through my mom's social media and see her new life pictures of beaches, yachts, dinners under fairy lights. Always smiling, always free. Meanwhile, I was drowning in invisibility. It wasn't until the 3rd month that she finally called. Her voice was bright, like nothing had happened. "Claire, I've missed you, sweetheart. How are you?" How was I? I wanted to scream, to ask her why, to make her feel even half the pain she'd caused me. But all I said was, "Why didn't you come back?" She sighed, annoyed. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. Daniel and I had a lot going on. Things just got complicated." Got complicated. That was how she described leaving her 15-year-old daughter alone in an airport for hours, forgotten like luggage. That night, I made a promise to myself, if she ever needed me, ever, I'd make sure she felt what I felt. I didn't know when or how, but I knew one day she'd learn that abandonment cuts both ways. When I hung up that night, I sat on the edge of the bed in the foster home, staring at the wall until the digital clock glowed 3:07 a.m. Her voice still echoed in my head, that careless, breezy tone that used to sound like comfort when I was younger. Now it sounded like poison. The truth was, part of me still wanted to believe her. I wanted her to say she was sorry, that she'd panicked, that she'd come back and found me gone. I would have believed anything if it meant my mother hadn't simply chosen a vacation over me. But she hadn't called to make things right. She'd called because she felt guilty for exactly 5 minutes. After that night, she vanished again. The months that followed were a blur of social workers' court dates and distant relatives who weren't sure what to do with me. Every time someone asked, "Where are your parents?" I felt my throat close. I'd learned how to answer with a smile. "They're traveling." It was easier than explaining that my mother had traded me for sunsets and champagne. I turned 16 in that foster home. There was a store-bought cake, a card signed by the staff, and a few kids clapping politely. I smiled, but inside I felt nothing. I didn't even bother checking my phone that day. She hadn't called the year before. She wouldn't call now. But the call did come 2 weeks later. Her voice was shaky this time, a tone I hadn't heard before. "Claire, I need your help." For a moment I froze. Then the anger rushed back. "My help," I whispered. "You mean the help of the kid you left at an airport?" There was a long silence on the line. Then she said softly, "Please, I know I messed up, but I need you to listen." Apparently Daniel had left her. He'd taken the money, the house, everything. She said she didn't know where else to go. I should have hung up. Every part of me screamed to hang up. But I didn't. I listened as she cried, actually cried for the first time in years. It felt surreal, hearing the woman who'd broken me sound so fragile. "Can I stay with you?" she asked finally. The question hung in the air like a dare. Stay with me. She didn't even know where I lived. "I'm in a foster home," I said quietly. "Remember, you never came back." Her breath hitched. "I'll fix it," she said quickly. "I'll talk to whoever I need to." "You shouldn't be there, Claire. You belong with me." Her words stung. Belong with me. As if she still owned that right. As if she could erase everything with a single sentence. "I don't think that's true anymore," I said, my voice trembling. "You lost that right the day you drove away." She started to say something, but I ended the call. My hands shook for a long time afterward, but not from sadness, from clarity, because that was the moment I realized forgiveness wasn't something she could earn back with tears. From that point on, I stopped waiting for her. I started thinking about my own life, about the future she had never planned for me. I began working part-time after school, saving every penny I could. I didn't tell anyone, not even the social workers, but I had a plan. Once I turned 18, I'd leave and never look back. And that's exactly what I did. By the time I graduated high school, I had enough saved to rent a small studio apartment. It wasn't much. One room, a mattress on the floor, a window that didn't quite shut, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, I remember whispering to myself, "You made it without her." For years, I built a life. College, a job at a small design firm, new friends. On the outside, I looked whole. Inside, though, that 15-year-old girl still sat on the airport bench waiting for someone who'd never come. I didn't hear from my mother again until almost 10 years later. It was a random Thursday afternoon. I was 25, working late, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered without thinking, and the voice that came through stopped me cold. Claire. It was her. Older now, raspier, but unmistakably her. For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Mom," I said before I could stop myself. She laughed softly, like we were old friends catching up. "Oh, thank God. You picked up. What do you want?" The words came out sharper than I intended. "I want to see you," she said. "Please, Claire. I've changed. I need to make things right." I almost laughed. Changed. The woman who'd left me at 15 wanted to talk about change. I was about to hang up when she added something that made my stomach twist. "I'm sick," she said quietly. "They found something. I don't have much time." The world seemed to slow down. For years, I'd imagined this moment, how I'd confront her, how I'd finally tell her what she did to me. But hearing her voice trembling with weakness threw me off balance. For the first time in a decade, I felt something other than anger. I felt pity. We agreed to meet the next day. When I walked into the cafe, I almost didn't recognize her. The glamorous woman from my memories, the heels, the makeup, the perfect hair was gone. In her place sat a frail figure with tired eyes and trembling hands. She smiled when she saw me, but her smile broke halfway through. "You look so beautiful," she whispered. I didn't answer. I just sat down. There was a long silence between us, filled with all the words we'd never said. She was the first to speak. "I think about that night all the time." I looked at her sharply. "Do you?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I thought you'd be fine. Daniel told me you'd be fine. He said you'd forgive me when you were older." The sound of his name still made my stomach tighten. "Forgive you," I repeated, my voice low. "You left your 15-year-old daughter at an airport and went on a vacation. You watched me disappear from your life through photos of beaches." She covered her face with her hands, sobbing softly. "I know, and I've hated myself every day since." I wanted to believe her. God, a part of me did believe her. But the scars she left weren't the kind that healed with apologies. They'd shaped who I became. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. "Please," she whispered. "I need you. I don't want to die alone." I stared at her hand, thin and pale veins visible beneath the skin. I remembered that same hand years ago, guiding mine when I learned to write, tucking my hair behind my ear, then later waving goodbye as she walked away. "I didn't take it. I spent years needing you," I said quietly. "You weren't there." She tried to speak, but I stopped her. "You taught me something, Mom. You taught me that love without responsibility isn't love at all." Her tears fell harder, but I didn't feel satisfaction. Just emptiness, the kind that comes after closure when revenge finally loses its flavor. We sat in silence for a long time. Then she whispered, "Can we start over?" I stood slowly. "No," I said softly, "but I'll remember you." When I walked out of that cafe, the sun was setting. The sky was burning orange, the same color as the airport lights that night so many years ago. But this time, I wasn't a lost girl waiting to be rescued. I was a woman who had rescued herself. That was the last time I ever saw her. 3 months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name written in her handwriting. Inside was a short note and a photo of us from when I was a child. In the photo, she was smiling, holding me in her arms. On the back of it, she'd written, "I wish I'd loved you the way you deserved." I cried for the first time in years. Not because I missed her, but because I finally understood forgiveness isn't always for them. Sometimes it's for us to let go of the part of ourselves still sitting in that airport, waiting for someone who isn't coming. After that letter arrived, I left it unopened for 3 days. I kept it on my kitchen counter, pretending it wasn't there, like ignoring it could make the past stay buried. But every time I walked past, that single line written in her uneven handwriting pulled me back. "I wish I'd loved you the way you deserved." It wasn't much, it wasn't enough, but it was something. When I finally opened the envelope again, a folded hospital discharge note slipped out along with the photo. She had written the words from a hospice bed. I didn't need to ask how I knew the handwriting trembled uneven and faint. That's how I learned my mother was gone. There was no funeral invitation, no call from a relative. No one asked me to attend or even told me when she passed. I found out days later through a mutual acquaintance who had seen an obituary notice in the local paper. Claire, she said, I'm so sorry for your loss. Loss. It was a strange word to hear, like it didn't belong to me. How could I lose someone I'd already spent half my life without? But that night, when I sat alone in my apartment staring at the photo of us, her smiling me barely 5 years old, something inside me cracked open. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't even forgiveness. It was the raw ache of finality. The quiet truth that no matter how much I'd hated her, I had once loved her more than anyone. And now that love had nowhere left to go. I wish I could say I moved on easily after that, but grief doesn't work that way. Even when you think you've built walls around your pain, it finds cracks to slip through. For months, I kept replaying our last conversation at that cafe, her reaching out me refusing. I'd told myself I did the right thing, but late at night I wondered if I'd gone too far. Had I punished her for too long? Or had she simply run out of time to make things right? I found myself visiting airports more than usual under the pretense of traveling for work. I'd sit near the gates and watch families say goodbye, watch mothers hold their daughters tight before security checkpoints. I wondered if those girls ever realized how lucky they were to be wanted to be kept. One day, while waiting for a delayed flight, I saw a little girl sitting alone on a bench, her backpack nearly swallowing her whole. She reminded me of myself, nervous, small, pretending to be brave. Without thinking, I walked over and sat beside her. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded quickly. "My mom's getting our tickets. She told me to stay here." I smiled softly. "Good girl," I said, and stayed there until her mother returned. As they walked away, hand in hand, something in me loosened. That 15-year-old version of me, the one who had waited in that airport for hours clutching her phone, she finally exhaled. That was when I realized healing doesn't come from revenge or confrontation. It comes from choosing to be different than the people who broke you. After that, I started volunteering with a youth program for foster kids. The first day, one of the girls asked, "Why are you here?" I didn't know how to answer at first. Then I said, "Because someone once forgot me, and I don't want anyone else to feel that way." For the first time, the purpose behind my pain started to make sense. Years went by. I built a quiet, steady life, one that didn't depend on anyone's approval. I bought a small house with a garden. I filled it with warmth, music, and laughter from friends who had become my chosen family. And every spring I planted one white rosebush near the fence, one for every year I survived without her. By the time I turned 35, that fence was lined with 20 white roses. Each bloom reminded me of how far I'd come, how much I'd rebuilt from nothing. Sometimes when the wind blew through them, I'd close my eyes and whisper, "I forgive you not because she earned it, but because I deserved peace." One afternoon, I was sorting through old boxes when I found something tucked between my college papers, an envelope I'd almost forgotten. It was the letter from my mother, the one with the photo inside. For a moment, I just stared at it, wondering what 15-year-old me would think if she saw who I'd become. Maybe she'd still be angry. Maybe she'd still be waiting. But I think she'd be proud too. Proud that we turned abandonment into independence, hurt into strength. I placed the photo in a frame and set it on my nightstand. Not as a tribute to her, but as a reminder to myself that even the deepest wounds can become the soil for something beautiful. And that's when it hit me. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about her at all. Maybe it was about freeing the little girl inside me who had been stuck at that airport for too long, frozen in fear and confusion. Maybe forgiveness was just another word for release. Years later, when people ask about my mother, I tell them the truth. I don't sugarcoat it and I don't make her a villain. I just say, she left me once, but she taught me how to never leave myself again. And that, I suppose, is the strange gift of pain. It can destroy you or it can define you. For me, it did both. So when I tell my story now, I tell it not out of anger, but as proof. Proof that even when love fails you, you can still rebuild it piece by piece within yourself. Proof that family isn't always who raises you. Sometimes it's who helps you rise. If you're listening to this and you've ever been left behind, I want you to know something: you are not broken. You are just unfinished. And one day you'll realize that the ones who walked away only cleared the path for you to find yourself. So keep walking, keep healing. And when you finally reach the other side of your pain, look back and smile at the person who survived it, because she deserves that smile more than anyone. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and tell me in the comments if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from being forgotten. Your story might help someone else find their strength too.